Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller, and I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here.
I was out for a walk the other day at work, and I was walking by this car, and I glanced over, and I noticed that it was a Mercedes, and the emblem on the front was massive. Just like bigger than the palm of my hand, almost the size of a volleyball, huge. And then I kept walking, and I noticed another emblem that was giant, and Ford, and Chevy, and Jeep, and all these things. And I looked, and I said, you know, that emblem on the Mercedes really caught my eye because it's giant. And it made me think back to when I was a kid. You know, my dad drove a Ford pickup truck, and the badge on the front of the grill was small enough to put in the palm of your hand. You could have easily slipped it into your pocket, and really nobody would have known it was there. Definitely smaller than a cell phone of today, and probably even smaller than a good old-fashioned flip phone from years ago. And, you know, it made me kind of think that maybe things were a little bit different then. The brand, the vehicle brand, didn't need to announce itself. So, you know, standing there just kind of walking and looking at these vehicles, it kind of hit me that somewhere along the way, the badge of the vehicle became more important than what was under the hood. And when I was younger, people, they knew what kind of vehicle they wanted because they knew things about it. They knew it had a good motor, or it had a motor they liked, or they had a motor they liked to work on or was easy to work on. They knew it had a good transmission. They knew it had good brakes. It had good tires. It had good trunk space. They knew it had good seats. They knew it had options. They knew it was a safe vehicle for their family. They knew things about the car inherently from experience, or maybe their family had a good run of luck and found that brand of car reliable, and then they had been a Ford family or a Chevy family or a Chrysler family or whatever it was. And there didn't need to be this big, giant, in-your-face emblem to point people in the direction that they wanted to go, because people knew enough and had an understanding about what they were actually looking for and what they were actually buying when it came to whatever brand they were shopping for. And I think society now, especially, emphasizes visibility over understanding, because branding now has grown so big and loud and shiny and more dominant because we live in this attention economy and this social media culture, right? First impressions matter more than ever. People don't want to watch an entire video. They want to watch the first 6 seconds, and if they can't be entertained, they just keep scrolling. And that has kind of woven itself into the very fabric of us, I think, as people also. And, you know, branding itself isn't bad. And visibility isn't necessarily the enemy because, you know, let's face it, I am on social media. I have a podcast that you all listen to that I'm so grateful you do. I have social media pages where I come and post content about the things I speak about and the things I write about, and I hang out on my live streams and talk to people in the morning and get to know people, and I try to, you know, use it as a tool to sell my book. So visibility isn't a bad thing. It's not the enemy for sure. But I think the danger is stopping at the surface, because there's so many things to dive into when it comes to people and relationships and cars, since that's what we were talking about when we first started the episode. But all the things and all the ideas in this world are so much deeper and so much bigger than just a surface level glance. And sometimes I think the danger is when we stop at the surface, we really miss out on what's underneath or what's inside. You know, and one of the ideas this kind of really brought to the front of my brain is with this giant Mercedes brand staring me in the face. I realized that we are encouraged these days to recognize things, not understand them. If 25 or 35 years ago, I asked any, you know, person on the street, hey, do you know what kind of car you drive? They would say, yeah, I drive a Ford, or I drive a Dodge Dart, or I drive whatever it was. And if you ask people today, they would say, yes, of course I know what kind of car I drive. I bought it, or, you know, I'm the one who drives it. But I think if you ask them to go find a vehicle in the parking lot, the first thing they would do is go look for the badge, because nothing else about it is recognizable to them. We are programmed and encouraged to recognize the emblem or the badge or the symbol, not understand anything about them. And my cousin, since he was a little kid, he is fantastic about this. He forever has been able to pick out minute and finite details of different vehicles, sometimes even vehicles of the same brand. And if you're listening to this, Daniel, I'm talking about you. You know, you could have two Chevy trucks go by and be like, oh, those trucks were identical. And he'd be like, no, they weren't. That one had chrome wheels. That one had black wheels. That one had a back rack. That one had different headlights. That one had different tires. Like, passing each other at 40 miles an hour. But that little understanding of the different parts and different components of the vehicle really kind of made us sit up and pay attention to him, this kid that was riding along with us. But the danger, I think, is we as people, when we just recognize and don't understand things, we sell ourselves short on so many things, because we judge people, let's face it, people and relationships, right? This isn't just about cars. You know that usually the story in the beginning of my podcast is not what the actual episode's about. But we as people, we judge others by their title, by their online presence, by their political beliefs, their affiliations, their friends, their influencer group. And I think everybody listening right now could probably raise your hand if I say, tell me one person you follow on social media that you know who they are because they have they're a famous TikToker or a famous person on Instagram with, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers, or maybe millions of followers. That's what we look at. Oh my God, they're doing so great. They're really killing it. They've got 1 million followers. They're so awesome. They're fantastic. Well, okay, so they have 1 million followers on social media. That doesn't say anything about who they are as a person. Unfortunately, some people on social media get attention with negative things, bad news and bad stories, and the person posting the video is really grabbing attention for the terrible reasons in this world. And they're not actually pursuing something good or something true. They're just doing it all to get followers and serve up clickbait to people. But I think what happens is when we look at those titles and the online presence and we judge with all those big shiny brands that are right in our face, the things we don't do is we don't ask why the person thinks the way they do. We don't ask what shaped the person. We don't ask what they've carried or what they've survived. Some people on social media have these incredible stories, but all we know is that we like their videos because they're funny, or we like their videos because they dance. But there's so much more behind the people, behind the creator, because they still, before social media was a thing or before they had 1 million followers, they were still a person with hopes and dreams and wants and likes and dislikes and quirks and intimate relationships with people and funny relationships with people and little things that they did every day, little nuances that only certain people in their life knew about. And that's the thing that the people who truly know them still know about them, despite the big shiny badge of saying, oh, I have 1 million followers. And I think we as people label a lot faster than we listen. We are super quick sometimes, I think, to judge people and just give them a label. And I don't necessarily mean just a bad label. It could be a good label. Super popular, influencer, great TikToker, successful, businessman, millionaire, entrepreneur, all these things. We give them that label really quickly. And sometimes it's accurate because, let's face it, we as people can be We can notice things and be good judges of character. So sometimes the label is accurate, but I think we do that a lot faster than we listen. We give people a snap judgment label long before we actually listen to their story or know what they're about. And I think the people in this world who truly listen to people and truly know people and truly get to know people and talk to them and love them and really get to know the details about them and what makes them tick, those people are so fantastic. And if you have one of those people in your life, if you're lucky enough to hang on to them forever, all right, because they are loving you and cherishing you for the person you are, not just the label that either they or someone else has stuck on you. And I think this can even pertain to other things in our lives, not just people and relationships, but, books. I think a lot of times books we skim, we don't study them. Even if it's a novel, sometimes I think we just skim the book or we read it quickly. We don't actually make notes in the margin and dive in and say, well, let's pull this line apart or let's pull this paragraph apart. Sometimes, and I know I'm guilty of this, how many people listening right now, you can raise your hands nobody's around to see you probably, or nod your head along if you've read a headline instead of the full story. You see a news article, you read the headline, you read the little byline that's like 3 or 4 sentences, and then you're done. That's it. and we listen to sound bites instead of substance, and we adopt opinions without examining them, and we just live in this really hard-hitting, hey, let's look at the surface, big brand, in-your-face, giant Mercedes symbol kind of world, and we're doing ourselves a disservice in a whole lot of ways. And even kids now, kids recognize their favorite YouTuber. They know what their symbol looks like or their merchandise looks like. It's all about the merch. Or they know what their channel emblem looks like or their profile picture looks like. And I think even adults have done this too, not just kids. But we've gotten very good at recognizing labels and very bad at doing the work of understanding things, whether it's people or books or relationships or even cars or the things in our lives. And I think, the cost of living like this, the cost of living at the surface is, superficial thinking leads to shallow relationships, and it leads to fragile beliefs that are easily shattered, and then people get angry because their beliefs have been broken into pieces by someone who took the time to really kind of listen and educate themselves and pick them apart. And I think that also leads itself to some people in this world having really easily shaken identities. People don't want to cling to who they are anymore. They kind of want to ebb and flow and go with the trends and say, oh, no, I like that person. Oh, no, I don't like that person. Oh, no, this is okay with me. Oh, no, that's not okay with me. It takes a really strong and powerful and grounded and compassionate person to stand up for what they believe in and what they have always believed in and said, no, this is who I am. And one of the most beautiful things you can do for yourself is remind yourself and give yourself permission to be okay with the fact that not everyone is going to like you. Sometimes we strive so hard to have people like us. We want people to befriend us and to like us and to want to spend time with us and to think we're funny and outgoing and a good person. But sometimes people disagree with our values and they want to shape us and change us and twist us and say, oh, you should do this different, or I think you should have a different opinion. And sometimes we cave to that and people fold to that. So stand up and give yourself permission to realize that not everybody in this world is going to like you. That's perfectly okay. Not everybody is everybody else's cup of tea. But when things get difficult in this world, labels and brands, they really don't hold on to us or comfort us. They're not there to help us through anything, but depth does, knowing things intimately does, education does, reading deep into the things that are going on in your life and pursuing knowledge and education and your feelings, they do. They're the things that can bring you comfort because you can truly say, I've thought about this, I understand it deeply and intimately, and I really know how I feel about this. Don't just change with the brands, oh, this is the next cool thing, because I have bad news. The person with 4 million TikTok followers, they don't know who the average person is. You're just a follower to them. So that brand that they're pushing and that big shiny thing, you're like, oh, I want to do everything like them, or I really agree with their brand or their choices or what kind of car they drive or what kind of house they live in. Like, I love that. Don't love it because they do it. Have some thoughts of your own. Think about what you really feel about the things, and don't just kind of follow the trend and the brand. Stand up for yourself and understand the depth that you have as a person to be really deeply educated on things. And if we tie this back into cars just for half a second, the shiny emblem on the front doesn't matter if the engine is junk, right? If the motor fails with 1,500 miles on it and the motor blows up, it doesn't matter how big the emblem on the front of the car is. Your massive problem is still that the motor is no good and now your car is useless and it won't go anywhere. And so reliability is built, it's not advertised. People years ago knew which vehicle they wanted because they had trusted information about it, and they'd put them to the test, and they had driven them, and they'd used them in the capacity they needed to use them. And they understood what they liked about the vehicle or didn't like. And if they found a bunch of things they didn't like, the next time they bought a vehicle, they'd get a different kind. And now, I think the same is true of people, right? The shiny emblem doesn't matter if the person in your life turns tail and runs when things get difficult. If you're in a relationship with someone and you're like, oh my God, they're so pretty and they're so trendy and they have the nicest clothes and they drive a nice car, that's fantastic. And it's not that it's not okay to like those things, because you can like nice cars and nice houses and people have good taste. It's okay to be bougie, but don't put all of your stock in that, because when things get hard, if they turn tail and say, I'm out of here, this isn't for me, this is too much work, I'll just go find somebody else, then it doesn't matter how much or how big of a brand they've built or how much money they have or how big their house is or what kind of shiny car they drive. If they're going to turn their back on you, then they're not the type of person you should be spending time with. And the same is true with intimate relationships and serious relationships and friendships and even relationships with people in your family. Sometimes, unfortunately, we don't always have the best relationship with people in our family or the people in our lives, and it's okay to recognize what has happened to them. It's okay to change. So back in the day, so to speak, like my daughter says, back in the 1900s, which, yes, that's when I was a child. Back then, the big emblem, shiny brand, it didn't need to be a thing back then. And I think this is true of vehicles and also of the society we lived in back then. Families chose vehicles based on their track record, their reliability, word of mouth, people in their family who liked them. Trust was earned. It wasn't marketed. People knew they had a good vehicle because they've driven it before. And the brand didn't need to just stand there and shout with this big, huge, the size of your head emblem on the front grille. Its work and its availability and reliability kind of spoke for it and spoke for itself and built its own reputation. And this parallel that we can draw to life is that strong character doesn't need constant validation. I know people in this world who don't need anyone to tell them that they're doing a great job and that they're being a good person. They just keep on doing it anyway. They don't need someone to pat them on the back and say, oh, gold star, you were nice to people today. They just love people the way they're supposed to be loved because that's the type of person they are. They help people and they drive their kids everywhere and they do everything for their family and they show up for the people they love in these big, giant, abundant ways. And it's just this really beautiful thing they've created, but they don't need a big shiny symbol or a T-shirt that says, hey, friend of the year or wife of the year or best friend of the year. They just are that type of a good person because that's who they are. The depth of a person, people who can hold deep conversations and really talk to you about things in your life that matter and that are going on with you, sometimes that depth speaks really quietly, but it lasts and lasts and sticks around, and it's really beautiful because it can pull you through so many trying times and keep right on showing up for you the way you deserve to be, shown up for. And I think some of the most solid relationships in this world, they don't require performance measures. They don't require checklists and check boxes and forms of, oh, you need to do this, 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 and this for me, and I'll do this, 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 and this for you. It's just this beautiful give and take that doesn't have rules and it isn't bound by some set of performance guidelines. It just ends up being this beautiful relationship because it's built on this solid foundation of people knowing each other and being interested in each other and loving each other and kind of caring for each other. And again, I don't just mean this intimately. This can be with friends or coworkers or your parents or your siblings or the people in your life that you want to know and understand and build a better relationship with. If you're someone who journals, you like to be reflective after you listen to these episodes, maybe ask yourself, listen, where am I settling for the label instead of learning? What things do I just take at face value and not ever follow up on? Because I know there's things in my life I've done that with. I am guilty, too, of just reading the headlines and not reading the whole story or thinking that some bigger brand is better than the other one because, oh, look at it, big, shiny, or they have a great website. They must be a better place to book with, or they must be a better airline, or they must be a better company, whatever it is, because their website's better or their logo's better. And maybe that's the case, but maybe it's not because maybe they sunk all their money into advertising instead of hiring good people. And also, well, one of the things that I asked myself after I was done walking, I was like, I wonder how many things in my life that I think I understand, but I really could give them some more time and dive more into them to understand them more deeply. And one of the check-ins I did with myself with, when I bring you all content, when I bring you podcasts, when I bring you social media videos, when I speak to people, when I coach people, I want to make sure that I'm building substance and not just polishing the emblem to my brand. I don't need a wax-covered rag to make the emblem on myself or my business big and shiny. I want to make sure I have some substance. So when people show up and they ask me, hey, we want to hire you for your services, or we want to listen to your podcast, or we want to read your book, or we want to have you coach us, I want them to know that behind me, behind the emblem, is a man of substance and a man of character and of a solid foundation, not just some big, shiny website with all this sparkly stuff that people are like, ooh, look at that. I bet he must be great. I would rather have a lackluster emblem that I polished off of an old soda can that I wrote on with Sharpie marker and, nailed to the wall and took a picture of, rather than spend all my money on this big, shiny, fancy marketing scheme just to say that the person you're hiring is hollow. I'd rather put the time and energy and investment into myself to make sure I can show up for you the way you deserve and the way you want me to, instead of just saying, oh, well, his emblem's really nice. And this isn't about rejecting modern life either. Like, I don't want you to think, oh, well, he's just dreaming. He wishes he could live back when he was a kid in the 90s. Like, some days I do. Trust me, some days I do wish I could go back. But it's not about rejecting modern life. It's about slowing down enough to look what's underneath the big shiny things that are all up in our face now. Social media brands, vehicle brands, websites, marketing, all that kind of stuff. Just take the time to slow down enough to look at what's underneath there and what you might be able to discover when you develop your ideas more and look a little deeper. And so as we close this, I kind of want to just bring this full circle and say, listen, when I looked at that big shiny badge, right, the big giant Mercedes badge, you know what it told me? It told me that it was a Mercedes. It caught my eye for sure because it was huge, like almost the size of my head, but it didn't tell me the whole story. It didn't tell me if the owner had ever had a massive engine failure. It didn't tell me if the brakes were any good. It didn't tell me how long their tires lasted. It didn't tell me if their transmission got too hot and they really hated driving it. They didn't tell me if the seats were uncomfortable or their kids hated sitting in the back seat because there was no leg room because it was such a crunched up SUV. None of that is told to me when I just stopped looking at the brand, at the emblem, at the thing on the hood, on the grill. I had to dive deeper if I want to know those things. I would have to actually go out and get the information. Your life and the information in our lives and your relationships and friendships are the same way. Something might catch your eye, but that doesn't mean it will tell you the whole story. So do yourself and the people in your life a favor and learn about them. Dive deep into them. Read books. Talk to people about ideas and things and beliefs and big ideas, not just about your neighbor or the gossip down the street. Because the things that matter most in life rarely announce themselves loudly. They kind of reveal themselves little by little over time, I think, and they show up through consistency and curiosity and by taking care of each other and the people in our lives. And I don't want to lose sight of that just because sometimes we get all these big, shiny emblems and brands thrown into our face. So maybe the work for us isn't to make our emblems bigger, so to speak, but maybe it's to make what's underneath stronger. Maybe it's to make ourselves, us as people, make us more resilient and more well-read and more connected to those people in our lives and better capable of handling difficult emotions and difficult situations. So working on ourselves will take us so much further than working on what we project to other people. You don't need to give off this big, shiny facade to other people and say, oh, look at me, look at how impressive and fancy I am. Instead, take the time to build yourself and build a character and a foundation and a level of understanding and a level of knowledge that can really show up for people when they need you most, because that is much more beautiful than any emblem ever could be, or any badge or any shiny website. Thank you so much for listening, my friends. If this has resonated with you, as always, feel free to share it with someone else in your life. If you need me for podcasts or books or social media videos or coaching or speaking, come find me on social media. Send me a message. Send me an email. I'd be happy to talk to you about any of those things. I hope you've enjoyed the message today. I hope no matter where you are in this world, you are safe. This releases on Sunday at 6, so when this comes out at my house, it's going to be snowing to beat the band. We're in for like a 20-inch snowstorm, so if you are somewhere where that is happening, please be safe and be well. If you are in other parts of the world, enjoy your day, your night, your evening, whatever it happens to be, and as always, take such great care. Thanks very much. Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.